Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Opinion Machine, the show where we talk about all things gaming, and my name is Killjoy, and today we're going to be doing another discussion about video game difficulty, and this is less about games and more about the attitude surrounding difficulty, and this kind of stems from a video that I watched by another YouTuber. I will not name them because I'm not interested in starting beef, but they were talking about Elden Ring, because of course they were talking about Elden Ring, and they kept saying Elden Ring can't have an easy mode. Elden Ring, it would break it, can't have this easy mode. And I took umbrage with this because I'm not a game developer, they're not a game developer, right? And any game can have a hard mode implemented, it can have an easy mode implemented, all this sort of stuff. And he kept saying it can't because it would break the game. And I'm thinking to myself, it's not that it can't, it just doesn't need one, right? And this is the thing with developers, right? When a game initially gets released in its final, gone gold format, whatever is put out is how the game is most likely intended to be played. Now, some games come with, easy / story mode, medium hard, very hard, or you unlock like a harder difficulty. With the case of Elden Ring and all the Souls games, you always have it so that you have your offline mode and you're in your online mode, and your online mode allows you to help, summon other people in to essentially come and help you fight wherever the boss is or areas of the game. In offline mode, you do get sort of the NPC summons that will help, but you don't get the same level of help, essentially. Now, my issue is that, just so you guys know where I stand with difficulty, because I think this is something that, as time's gone on, my opinions have changed, and I'm at a point now where I'm like, I am absolutely 100% okay if games have difficulty sliders or difficulty options and all that kind of stuff, right? For example, I really got into Splinter Cell Blacklist and started playing the game on the hardest difficulty, and I was like, yeah, great, this is awesome. But, people don't want to play on that difficulty, cool, play it on easy or normal or whatever. And I always feel like normal should be how the game's made, and then easy or hard or very hard and all those things that are added in as extra difficulty settings should then, adjust things on the fly. Some games do it really well, some games don't. Some games let you pick. You have like easy, medium, hard, then custom. And custom's always a good way of doing it because it lets you pick, yeah, I want more enemies, but I want assistance on other things. I want aim assist on or something. And I think customizable difficulty is definitely the way to go into the future, because I think that's going to be more beneficial to many people. Like, you want to customize your how you play the game, cool. I think it is the Total Warhammer games, it might be the Total War games in general, that let you have difficulty for the battles and difficulty for the map and overworld. So if you love the battles but you hate the map and overworld, you can reduce that to a much simpler setting, and then you can then enjoy the difficulty of the battles, or vice versa, or stuff like that. That's a great way of doing difficulty. Anyway, this YouTuber kept saying, oh, Elden Ring can't have an easy mode, it would break the game, all this sort of stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, no, it could have an easy mode, right? Right now, the game doesn't need one. The game doesn't need one. The game is how it is, right? I've discussed this enough with people in the past. Right? The game is fine as it is, right? Would people appreciate an easy mode? Of course they would, right? Does it need one? No, right? The game is put out in that sense. There are options in there that you can use, and don't be an absolute die-hard fan and not use these tools that are given to you. Those tools are there if you want to use them. No shame. But easy modes essentially are... there are many ways to do it. Right, if you think about it, right, you could still put an easy mode into something like Elden Ring or any of the Souls games and still have a difficult game or a difficult time. For example, right, you could have it so that you have you take reduced damage from everything. So there's a good chance that you're still going to die to some of these bosses, but maybe you can take 2-3 more hits than usual. That's one way of doing it, I guess. There's obviously the increasing your attack power, but the problem with doing that is that if you make the game too easy, I guess you are going to overpower yourself, and you might just find that you're not enjoying it. Other ways to do it are to have enemies have less attacks. You could have it so that status effects aren't particularly as effective. There are many ways to do it, basically, right? And if you did specifically for Elden Ring, if you did an easy mode, it would have to be offline only, right? Because realistically, you can't have that and then be online unless there's like 2 separate servers or whatever for it. But my point being is that if the developers wanted to, they could implement something like this. I want to give another example of another game that when released was considered difficult, and that was Metroid Dread. Metroid Dread came out and it had normal and hard mode. And then 6 months down the line, they implemented easy mode and then dread mode. So you had both extremes. You had one-hit death mode and easy mode, which gave you, like, I think you took half as much damage and you replenished double the health or something like that. And this is where I'm kind of like, when people say that games can't have easy modes or can't have hard modes and stuff, it's like, they're like, oh, developers intended the game to be a certain way. Now, I'm not saying that FromSoft are going to go back and implement any of this stuff, but this just proves that a game can come out in a state where it's like, this is developer intended, but again, developers can then go back later on and they can add in optional things, because this is the problem, right? People get really angry on both sides about difficulty, and there's no need for it, because a lot of the single player games, which is where a lot of difficulty comes from, like, you have some choice and customization of how you want to play it. Even with Elden Ring, right? Even with big RPGs like that, not everyone's going to play Sword and Shield. People can play with different weapons. Like, options are never a bad thing, right? I think we can all agree that options are always a good thing. And the idea that somebody's playing, like, I play Metroid Dread on normal. Like, at some point I'd like to do a hard mode run. Will I ever play Dread mode? Probably not. But I'm glad that's there for people. Will I ever play easy mode? Probably not. But I'm glad that's there for people. I don't think options are ever a bad thing, and I do like the fact that they did go back and do it. The game came out as developer intended, let's say. Same with Elden Ring is now. And if the Elden Ring developers choose to go back and add it in, they will. If they don't, they don't. You know, like, the game is how it is. It's developer like intended and developer complete, and we have to accept that, right? I know I've got up on my high horse about the pause button thing in the past, but that to me is more what I consider an essential, accessible thing, which we'll get onto in a bit. But in terms of the game's difficulty, in terms of how people want to play the game, how they see the game, right? The developers released the product that they wanted to release. The game's doing very well for itself. Elden Ring looks like it's been absolute success for them. Like, great, perfect. It's not a game for me, right? I'm not one of these people that really wants to play those type of games. And that's fine. It doesn't have to be for me. It's not for everyone. But we need to get away from this attitude of saying, oh, they can't do these things, it can't have this, blah blah blah, because at the end of the day, if they really wanted to put an easy mode in, they could, and they would, right? If they wanted it there. But they've got options and things and all that sort of stuff. The other thing is that because games are online all the time now, because we have always online on so much stuff, we don't have cheat codes anymore, right? Back in the day when I played a lot of games, like, for example, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, one of the unlocks was do every single gap in the game. I couldn't be asked to do that as a kid. I have a whole book downstairs which is just cheat codes, alright? And nobody gets funny about that. Like, when I used to play GTA 2, cheat codes, like, oh, I just want to spawn some weapons or spawn some vehicles, you know. And this is the thing, because games are online all the time, why not? You know, it's a shame that we don't have, like, cheat codes. The last game I can remember having cheat codes is Shovel Knight. And so, like, something like Elden Ring, in the offline mode, if there were cheat codes where you were like, oh, you do, like, more damage, your health regens super fast. Like, again, you're only doing it because it's that mode is single player. There is no, like, online stuff. You're not messing with anybody else. You're just messing with yourself, and it's something that we've really gotten away from because, you know, companies want things to be always online, which is a shame, because I think cheat codes were a massive part of games, especially back in the day. Like, you know, a lot of the stuff I had on Dreamcast, a lot of stuff on PS1, PS2, that era, GameCube, tons of cheat codes. You know, unlock everything, give me all weapons, give me all levels, 99 lives, all that stuff. We don't get any of that anymore, and I really think that that's something that should be implemented in many more games. Because at the end of the day, I don't give a fuck if somebody cheats in a single player game. Like, good for you. Play it how you want to play it. It's kind of how, you know, and that addresses that kind of, oh, I want to make this game a bit too hard, but I want to see the rest of the game. Like, fuck it, have the craziest leveled up weapon in the game. If you want to do that, do that. Like, there should never be any, like, issue with that, you know. And something else as well. Like, we get really on the case of people about, you know, games having difficulty. But look at all the retro games that are coming back. Now, I know that there's obviously retro games in some aspects were built to eat, you know, quarter munchers as they were called. You know, things like Streets of Rage, Golden Axe, all the arcade games like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle beat 'em up games. But let's take some examples of games that have come back and had these extra options implemented for people. Like, I played Mega Man. I got the Mega Man Legacy Collection. I played Mega Man 1, and I'm not great at it, but that game is quite hard, right? People might say, oh, it's not that difficult, but like, you know, Mega Man 2, bit on the easier side. Mega Man 1, very tough game. And they implemented in that like a rewind function and a save state, I believe. It might just be rewind. But the fact that you can rewind goes to show that developers do think, oh, this game is maybe a bit tough. There's an option there if you choose to use it. And that's kind of what I like. You know, Super Ghouls and Ghosts as well, which is on the SNES Online. That also has the rewind option, which, to be fair, in a game like that, which is brutally difficult, and that the difficulty in that game is rampant and non-stop because of the time it was made, the fact that there is great. I have no issue with these kind of things being added in, because like, if I wanted to go back and play like Mega Man, and when I did with the first one I was trying to beat a boss, I don't like the idea of having to respawn all the time, so I use that rewind function to try and practice on the boss and like actually get good at it. And in that particular case, I think you can have save states. I know with the Switch Online you can do it, I just can't remember if Legacy Collection did. But even with Switch Online, like, let's say I want to practice on bosses on Donkey Kong Country, right? Not a game that I would say notoriously difficult, but there are some hard levels in there. And let's say I want to practice some of the boss fights. I can make those save states, and I can go and you know, and essentially practice that. And you know, yeah, you could say, oh, you know, these games came out back then and they didn't have all these options and all that stuff, and now they do. And yeah, that is true, but I also like the fact that we have more options to do stuff like that in this day and age. And with games coming out now, developers can choose to put in options to help players. Like Elden Ring would be, I don't know whether it has this, right? Elden Ring or Bayonetta or games where there's a lot of boss fights. It'd be really cool if there was like the ability to just have like a save on that boss, in case you want to like practice over and over again. You know, like you know, boss rush modes just come out for Metroid. That's a good way of learning the bosses. Like things like that. Like I like this idea that you can have options for people to be like, actually, I would like to put a flag down here, essentially to save at this point, so that I can reload that particular save and just keep practicing and practicing. And you can kind of do that anyway by having multiple saves. You know, you can have a save file there. But you see it with older games, you see them, the fact that a lot of these old like legacy collections of games will put in rewind functions and will put in save states to try and help people get through the games that never got through them, but also to allow people to practice. And I think that's really cool, and something that we should be praising and should be saying, hey, look, let's say, I don't know, like Sonic Origins collection's coming out. Let's just say in that they're like, yeah, there's a rewind function, for example. Cool. I might never use it because, you know, I played a lot of the old Sonic games and I'm like, okay, I know these levels fairly well. But, you know, there are a couple levels in Sonic 2, for example, like Metropolis Zone, where you can get completely destroyed by just the enemy placement in some of those levels, which is quite poor. So at least you can rewind and go, actually, I'll try doing this a different way. Let's see if I can actually figure out how to avoid this. You know, and it's, you know, part of it's learning, part of it's giving you those tools to help you learn. And I think that's something that we should be grateful for. And we are seeing that more and more and more with these older retro games. A lot of stuff that's on Switch Online, or pretty much everything, has those. I'm sure other collections do. Castlevania Collection has a rewind function, and let me tell you, that was really useful for me, who kind of sucked at that, the first Game Boy Advance game. But my god, am I grateful that I could do that, because it meant that I could save at the beginning of the boss, and then I could keep, rather than having to go back and run back to the save point. Yeah, okay, it kind of breaks how the game was designed, but like, I'm okay with that because it means I'm not wasting time. I've still got to beat the boss. It doesn't let me skip that boss. I've still got to do it, but at least I can rewind between me dying, going back to the beginning of the boss and trying again way quicker than I ever could do, you know? And I like that. I like that that's an option. And this is the cool thing about games. So these are the two things that I'm like, this video is a bit weird, but I kind of wanted to go over this stuff because, one, I don't like people's attitude towards difficulty. and like almost like being incorrect in what they're saying. Like, yes, alright, when a game gets released, it's developer intended. But we live in a day and an age now where we have so much stuff that's just there, available, but completely optional. And that's something that's really important, because when you play a lot of those older games like Castlevania, Mega Man, Ghouls and Ghosts, they are really tough games if you've never played them before. So having those tools is fine. But then you have that attitude of like, no, just get good, get better at the game. It's like, no, but these tools are there to help with that, to help people see the entire game, to help people learn and practice. And this is why I have no issue with something like Elden Ring having an offline easy mode or implementing cheats. Because we as players, when we play single player games, this is completely irrelevant to multiplayer, when we can play single player games, we should be able to play that in the way that we choose to play, in the sense that I'm going to go with a particular build in the game, I'm going to like spend my time and be very slow, I'm going to try and speed run the game. Like, the options are there for you to play it. And all of these things allow people to kind of play the games at their own pace, how they want to. If you want to be that Elden Ring player that doesn't want any summons or doesn't want any help, and you're going to play it exactly how you grind, great, that's absolutely viable. But then if you're also the sort of player that's like, I don't want to grind, I'm only going to spawn help in, great, that's also, you know, like completely viable, and you shouldn't be shat on for it. And then these older games, Mega Man, Ghouls and Ghosts, you know, having those functionalities. If you want to play the game and, you know, never have to go back to the beginning of the level and you just use the rewind function, great, definitely do it. Like, let you play it the way you want to play it, because you're not affecting anybody else. And the last thing I do want to bring up, and I think this is going to be quite what's the word, divisive when I say this, right? Because a lot of people will say, you know, easy modes are, you know, equal accessibility, and some people are like, no, easy mode doesn't mean accessibility. What do we mean, like, as gamers, when we mean accessibility? I think the most common idea of accessibility is the idea of having options for people that have some kind of disability, whether it be mental or physical. For example, I'm colorblind, so I really appreciate it when there are colorblind options in games, and that's a whole separate video that I will probably do at some point, talking about what it's like being a colorblind gamer. But like, just for an example, Doom and Doom Eternal both had colorblind modes, and they didn't do a huge amount, but what they did do is actually made one of them, when I played Doom, made the game a bit lighter, a bit easier for me to see the enemies. And in Doom Eternal, I don't know if the first Doom 2016 had it, but you could actually customize the color of the UI, and you could make the UI like super garish, but really easy to read. Now, you know, we've seen colorblind modes, we see controller support for some people who can't use mouse and keyboard because maybe RSI. We see stuff for, you know, other support for like those that Microsoft controller that, you know, for someone who might only have one hand, or who might have a motor disease, unfortunately, and they aren't able to use a traditional controller. And we see that as accessibility, and I think that's really important. But one thing I think we need to address is that an easy mode is a type of accessibility, but not in the way that we think it is. So actively making a game easier does allow for some players to actually get into a game, in the sense that, oh, I have more time to think about things, I have more health, I can kind of brute force my way a little bit more than I could on the normal, or even on the hard mode or whatever. Now, I'm not saying that easy is necessarily an accessibility mode in the traditional sense, but it does make the game a more accessible for people, just regular people, and even people with potential physical or mental problems, just by being a bit more lenient. And this is why the attitude around difficulty is a hard one, because nobody's wrong in how they want to play the game. It's only when they get very defensive and say, and gatekeep is probably the best way to describe it. It's like, this gatekeeping attitude of a lot of games is just not cool, right? And I think I would like to see us be in a place where we have both of these things. We have accessibility for people that do have disabilities, and allows them to play a game that in a way that they can enjoy it, and they might not necessarily want the game to be easier in the traditional sense, but easier to like pick up and play and be able to see what they're doing, or stuff, specific controller inputs, so it's easier for them if they've got issues with their hands or things like that, right? But also, like, it's okay to have people that, I don't want to use the word casual, but people that might not be as into a particular game. If a game, slows down the enemy's aggression, for example, that actively makes it a little bit easier for people. And the cool thing about that is that once they get good enough to play the game on easy, they're going to go, oh cool, and they can come to normal or hard or whatever. They look for that extra challenge, and that means when the next game comes out in that series, they're probably just going to be like, yeah, I don't need easy mode anymore. There's a lot of cool stuff about it, and I, on the other end of this as well, right, I want to make it clear that I think hard modes and challenge modes are awesome as well. For those people that are really good at a game, give them an extra challenge, let them approach that. I think it's like Metal Gear Solid has like European Extreme, which is like, can't be seen by anyone, can't set any alarms, don't use any rations, to get like the highest rank is quite crazy. Like, I'm all for it, right? I've always been, especially in the last 5 to 6 years, I'm all for this idea of having more options for everybody. Sure, have a game come out in developer intended, no problem. But maybe down the line, do think about adding some things in specifically to help people with disabilities, or to help people that might want to get into your game but just maybe aren't just that good at the moment and they want to get better at it. And like, you could say, oh well, they could just persevere, but sometimes having a bit of an extra step or stepping stone does allow for those players to get into something like that. And I think as gamers and people that play a lot of video games, we need to stop being gatekeepy, and we need to be more appreciative of just people playing games. Like the fact that so many people bought and Elden Ring's done so well, we should appreciate that, because that's insane. Like, RPGs always do like alright, but like, this game's obviously done really well. I mean, I know that the Souls genre has a lot of a big fan base, but this is like blown up to crazy levels, and we should appreciate that. Even the people that are just buying it that may still hate the difficulty, the fact that it's become so popular, great, appreciate that. Help people, be patient with people. And this goes for all things, like, my attitude to Metroid Dread, when it first came out, I was like, I wasn't that difficult. Of course it was difficult for some people, and I think it's just something we need to do as, like, I say we, people need to do as a collective group. I don't want to harp on people whether they play a game on easy or hard or whatever. Like, I think people can play the game they want to play. If they enjoy something, let them enjoy it and stop being horrible about it. But as a gaming industry going forward, I would love to see more customizable difficulty, and I would love to see more accessibility and all of this stuff, so that more people can enjoy a product when it comes out. And I know that these things take time and effort, but we should really be putting that at the forefront. Developers should be putting that at the forefront, and I think we should be appreciative of the fact that we are going that way, or at least it feels like we are going that way. So there we go. It's a bit of a weird video. It's more just a general talk about some difficulty concepts and attitudes, and I'm sure people will roast me in the comments and whatever, but so be it. I wanted to talk about it, so I'm talking about it. But thank you very much for watching this video. As always, if you like the video, hit like. If you want to see more content like this, then hit the subscribe button down below, and links for Facebook and Twitter will also be below in the description. And until next video, I will see you then.